When we look at almost any social media platform, news outlet, or even examining the relationships in our own homes and lives, it continues to show us the same thing. Loving people is hard. In this video, let's know His love in our neighbor. When Jesus was approached by a lawyer and asked which is the greatest commandment, Jesus says, "You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind. This is the great and first commandment, and the second is like it. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. On these two commandments depend all the law and the prophets." Earlier in the same gospel, Jesus tells us, "You have heard that it was said, 'You shall love your neighbor and hate your enemy.' But I say to you, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you, so that you may be sons of your Father who is in heaven." Our culture continues to grow polarized over new topics seemingly every day. Even in our church, which ought to be known by one of the hallmarks of oneness, seems to be now so fragmented and just as divided as the world we see around us. In the midst of the confusion, anger, and resentment, it stands this need, this command to love our neighbor. Yet so often the need to be right or to be the loudest or strongest seems to be much more pressing than the command to love our neighbor and everyone around us. Love can seem so weak. When we feel threatened by someone, by the actions against us or their words, the last thing that we think we should do is love them. We can begin to think, if they have the audacity to treat me or someone that I love so poorly, why should I do anything other than make a return attack? Soon the command to love our neighbor is replaced with making unjust criticisms, unfair judgments, and finding which people belong to the us crowd and who belongs to the them crowd. What we quickly discover is that ignoring this command to love our neighbor results in our hearts becoming smaller and smaller and smaller, filing more and more people into the them category, until we find that our own unrealistic and unloving standards of who we are called to love has left us entirely alone. If we find ourselves in this never-ending loop of anger or bitterness or resentment, how can we possibly start loving those around us? I don't think that this command to love our neighbor was given to us without an answer to this question. Nor do I think that the answer shows some kind of naive understanding on Christ's part. He gives us the answer. He shows us how we are called to love our neighbor. And we can start doing it by practicing mercy. Not only is mercy clearly shown through the entire life of Christ, but when he teaches us how to pray, we find that it's directly built into the words of the Our Father. "Forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us." When we cooperate with the grace of God in receiving his mercy, it can lead to a ripple effect of mercy as it helps us to learn to forgive those who have caused us so much pain, or to ask forgiveness from those we have pained. At the conclusion of the Year of Mercy in 2016, Pope Francis told us, "Mercy cannot become a mere parenthesis in the life of the Church. It constitutes her very existence, through which the profound truths of the gospel are made manifest and tangible. Everything is revealed in mercy. Everything is resolved in the merciful love of the Father." When we are merciful, when we forgive or ask for forgiveness, we find that this is the most visible sign of the Father's love, which Jesus sought to reveal by his entire life. Every page of the gospel is marked by this imperative of a love that loves to the point of forgiveness. Even at the last moment of his earthly life, as he was being nailed to the cross, Jesus spoke words of forgiveness, "Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do." Far too often, mercy can remain an abstract concept that lacks any real-world application. We can take on a warped understanding of mercy, thinking that it would put us in a place of power over another, or that if we reject showing mercy, forgiving someone, it will give us the ability to hurt them just as badly as they have hurt us. Sadly, in rejecting mercy, when we refuse to forgive or ask for forgiveness, it is we who suffer. It leaves us trapped in the chains of past wounds, fueling fires of our own self-hatred. It can all be so exhausting, but mercy, it can extinguish those flames. It offers us a chance to be freed of the burden of animosity and finally experience a life where our thoughts, emotions, and actions aren't dictated by pain and instead are animated by love. In his 1965 essay, The Climate of Mercy, the Trappist monk Thomas Merton recognized how mercy isn't some kind of optional element to our faith, but is a sign of a life deeply transformed by the cross of Christ. Rather than being some kind of deduced concept where we think if he is the supreme being, then it follows that he is supremely loving. Every Christian is called to an experience, an event, which God reveals himself to us in his redemptive love and is the greatest gift, which is the outcome of this event, our mercy to others. Indeed, Burton tells us, there is but one center of all mercy, one merciful event which we can receive mercy and give it, or give it and receive. This event is the saving mystery of the cross, which alone enables us to enter into a true spiritual harmony with one another, seeing one another not only in natural fellowship, but in the spirit and mercy of Christ, who emptied himself for us and became obedient even to death. Our own capacity to be merciful to others finds its origin in our encounter with the cross. This cross, the one that we are called to take up daily, helps deepen our capacity to truly love others, to be merciful to them. If we reject the cross, it will only leave us offering a superficial kind of love. Merton explains, if we love others only insofar as they love us, we are confined within an iron law of selfhood, which seeks to assert our own existence and defend it, however hopelessly, against extinction. The love we thus give to others is the reward we offer them, the payment with which we buy the recognition of our own existence. With such love, we only bribe them to help us persist in an illusion of a deathless and complete autonomy. And we bribe them by helping them defend the same illusion in themselves. Love, and in turn mercy, true love and mercy that we receive and share is meant to be deeper, more meaningful, and more transformative than simply a futile experience in self-preservation. For Merton, to receive mercy and to give it is then to participate as sons of the Father in the work of the new creation and of redemption. In other words, our filial identity, our baptismal identity, is realized when we receive and give mercy. As children of God, we are called to see our neighbor through his eyes. God does not gaze with grim and implacable revulsion into the heart of the sinner to discern there the thing or the being which he hates. He understands the sinner mercifully, that is to say, that his look penetrates the whole being of the sinner with mercy from within, so that the inmost reality of the sinner is no longer sinfulness, but sonship. Thus, the mercy of God shows the sinner to himself, no longer as existentially opposed to truth, but as reconcilable with it. Understanding mercy as an expression of our baptisms shows that forgiving others or asking for forgiveness is not some kind of feeling or sentiment that we have to muster up within ourselves. In giving and receiving mercy, we are cooperating with the grace of God and more firmly rooting ourselves as sons and daughters of the Father. Merton shows us that this isn't a new idea in the church. It has deep historical roots in the tradition. He tells us that Thomas Aquinas points the same thing out, that mercy and grace are the new law, a perfect law binding on the Christian insofar as the other laws, in that they have of life and meaning, are fulfilled in mercy and love. The old law, says St. Thomas, gave the precept of charity and mercy, But the new law is the spring of the Holy Spirit himself to dwell in our hearts, fulfilling himself the command to love by giving us the power to do what was otherwise impossible. What are the new laws of God written in the hearts of men, Augustine asks, if not the very presence of the Holy Spirit? Hence the law of mercy is not an extrinsically given imperative, but an inner power, not an inexorable demand, but imposed on a weak and confused nature, but a personal inclination to love imparted by the presence of the Spirit of sonship who makes us free, liberating us from the tyranny of natural weakness and of existential demands for self-assertion. We enter into this climate and breathe its pure air by faith, which is submission to the new law of grace and forgiveness. That is to say, submission to a law of accepting and being accepted, loving and being loved, and a personal encounter with the Lord of life and with our brother in him. How we encounter our neighbor is transformed when we live our lives according to this law of mercy and grace. The Holy Spirit truly comes to our aid and gives us the freedom to live as beloved children of the Father. Seeing those around us through the eyes of God takes away the burden of trying to categorize people into who is with us or who's against us, and it instead frees us to recognize the dignity of each person, ordering our hearts in a way that our only proper and adequate attitude towards them is love. Merton tells us, we ourselves are not entitled to be more demanding than God. Whoever is acceptable to him is therefore acceptable to us, and this is the test of our faith and of our obedience to him, that we become, to some extent, able to be merciful to others as he has been merciful to us, knowing that this mercy is the cohesive power that establishes and manifests the Father's love in the living and unified mystical body of the Son. Hence, if a man is to be acceptable to us, nothing more is required than that he need our mercy, whether he himself is aware of this or not. It is not required that he be a certain type of man belonging to a special race or class or even religious customs. Least of all is it required that he be exactly like ourselves, friendly toward us and disposed to flatter us with a privileged consideration of our person and our ideas. When we let God be God, and let him set the standards for who is acceptable and in need of love and mercy, it gives us a chance to flourish in being his beloved sons and daughters. This isn't some kind of idealistic view of the world. It's an anticipation of the coming of the kingdom. Sadly, it's far too easy to reduce mercy to something that I can do out of my own strength to those who I consider acceptable in my sight. This is a distortion of mercy, and is not only harmful, Merton actually considers it demonic. He tells us, men, tribes, nations, sects, parties set themselves up in forms of existence which are mutual accusations. They thus seek survival and self-affirmation by living demonically, for the demon is the accuser of the brethren. A demonic existence is one which insistently diagnoses what it cannot cure, what it has no desire to cure, what it seeks only to bring to full potency in order that it may cause the death of its victim. He continues, there is a false and demonic mercy, then, which grows in the soil of this kind of accusing existence, an existence forfeit to self-complacency and contempt, an existence rooted in resentment, hatred, and war. Such mercy, having, let us suppose, successfully awakened guilt in the other, absolves the guilt when sufficient gestures of submission have been extorted from him by force or manipulation. But it is not Christian mercy to create a bad conscience in my brother and then entice him by pardon into my own poisoned bosom, admitting him into the stifling climate of my own lovelessness. Discipleship is demanding, and oftentimes we are confronted by our own weaknesses, especially when the time comes to lay down our life by showing mercy to another or asking for forgiveness. But in trusting the mercy that we have received from God, we can also trust that any mercy that we give or receive will ultimately be healing. And it's not enough for this culture of mercy to be found in just a few. It needs to radiate throughout the entire church. Because if we don't show the world what mercy looks like, who will? Let us conclude with Thomas Merton's own words as he tells us, Christian mercy must discover in faith in the Spirit a power strong enough to initiate the transformation of the world into a realm of understanding, unity, and relative peace, where men, nations, and societies are willing to make the enormous sacrifices required if they are to communicate intelligibly with one another, understand one another, cooperate with one another, in feeding the hungry millions and in building a world of peace. Such is the eschatological climate of the new creation, in which pardon replaces sacrifice, and the whole world is filled with the mercy of God as the waters cover the sea.